Food. They say you can't live without it. But has anybody ever actually put that to the test? No, but for real, you either eat food or you die. And there's not really many exceptions there. However, what you eat can vary dramatically from person to person, from situation to situation, from day to day. For example, in college, I was so poor that spending $5 on the local cheap pizza place for a pizza was absolutely not an option for me. I just simply could not afford the lowest quality pizza that money could buy. But now that I'm employed, I can go and buy a burrito at Chipotle right now. And most times, I can afford to add guac. And what I simply want to do today is run the math with you on fancy dining experiences. And I'm not talking about like Longhorn Steakhouse, okay? I'm talking about way, 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 way fancier. Because there are some people that take this eating thing way too far. There are some people who are just not satisfied with what they could create at home or what they could get at the nicest restaurant in their town. They want more. As Paul says in Philippians of these people, their end is destruction, their God is their belly, and they glory in their shame. But you know the kind of people I'm talking about. I'm talking about the foodies. Foodies that travel the world spending way too much money on way too little food. And as somebody who loves food, a part of me relates to that, a part of me gets it. I mean, having the best food in the world sounds really awesome. And if it really is the best food in the world, it's probably worth a lot of money. And while most topics that I talk about, I have zero experience and did zero research, I actually have eaten at one of these fancy Michelin restaurants before. I took my wife to one of these restaurants. I took her to a 2-star Michelin restaurant. We were in Italy because I knew that she would love it. When I walked in, I immediately thought, this is going to be incredibly expensive and very pretentious. And you know what? It was both of those things. But it was also by far the best meal I have ever had in my entire life. Like, I think about this meal probably at least once a week, and it has been literally years since I ate this food. I fantasize about one day being able to afford another meal like this again. They were so confident at this restaurant that the only options on the menu that they put in front of you were how many courses you want. You didn't get to pick the food that you ate. The idea is, hey, we at this restaurant know your taste buds better than you do. You don't get to pick what you want to eat. You don't even know what you want to eat. We know better than you do what you want to eat, and we're gonna give it to you. I have never felt more like a king than the 4 hours that I spent inside a 2-star Michelin restaurant in Florence. That being said, I don't think that I can become a full-blown foodie. And it's not because of the food, it's not because of the experience, the service that I received. It's simply a math equation. So let me explain. One thing that I love to do is bake my own bread. So I bake bread at home with relatively premium ingredients. Like, I don't go cheap on ingredients. And I do that at least once a week, usually on the weekends. So here is a picture of a loaf of bread that I made. And let me break down how much this loaf of bread costs for me to make. So you can see here, it's about $1.60 in flour, about 3 cents in water, about 5 cents worth of really good salt. And I'm being really conservative and saying I think the sourdough starter that I put into it is probably worth 30 cents, which means this loaf of bread cost me $1.98 to make at home. Now here's a picture of some bread that I ate at the Michelin restaurant as one of the courses. Now if you take the total bill of what I spent at this Michelin restaurant and you divide it out by the number of courses, and then you divide it down into this one piece of this one course, my estimate is that this little tiny piece of bread at the Michelin restaurant cost me $20. So was this bread at the Michelin restaurant significantly better than this bread that I made at home? Yeah, it was really good. It was a lot better than the bread that I make at home. However, this 1/10 of a loaf of bread, I could make 10 full loaves of this bread for the price of 1/10 of this loaf of bread. So is this bread worth 100 times more than this bread? No, I don't think it was 100 times better. And so from a food perspective, that's just a bad return on investment at a Michelin restaurant. But let's keep going. It's not just about the food, it's also about the time that you spend in the place that you're at. So again, I was there for 4 hours at this restaurant in Florence, and we spent about $700 to be there for 4 hours for 2 people. In other words, between 2 people, we were spending $175 an hour to sit in this restaurant and eat food, which, if you're curious, is about $3 every minute. That is a lot of money. Imagine just throwing $3 a minute off of a bridge every minute for 4 hours. However, I can take my wife to Chipotle right now, get 2 meals for about $22. We do it once a week. We call it Chipotle Day. It's our favorite day of the week. And for $22, we can sit in a Chipotle for an hour and eat a meal together, which means the Michelin restaurant was 8.5 times more expensive from a time perspective than the Chipotle near my house. But the last angle that I think we need to look this through is what I've developed in college, which is the calories per dollar ratio. This is a very important ratio for if you were like me in college and just deeply in poverty. The calories per dollar ratio tells you for every dollar I'm spending, how many calories am I getting? Because I need calories to stay alive, and I have to spend money to get those calories, and I need to maximize that equation. How can I get the most amount of calories for the least amount of dollars so that I can survive another day without starving to death? Again, we'll just use Chipotle as a good benchmark. Chipotle has a pretty strong calorie per dollar ratio. You know, there are fast food restaurants that have a better calorie per dollar ratio. There are foods you can buy at home, especially foods like rice, ramen, beans. If you buy them in bulk, especially where the calorie per dollar ratio is really high. But Chipotle is a good benchmark because I think everybody's familiar with, like, okay, it's a decent meal. It's pretty big, it's pretty substantial, and the calorie per dollar ratio is pretty good. So you can get a burrito at Chipotle, which is going to be about 1,100 calories, give or take, depending on what you get on the burrito. And that's going to cost you about $11. And so the calorie per dollar ratio at Chipotle is about 100. And what that means is for every $1 you spend at Chipotle, you're getting about 100 calories to keep you alive, to keep you from starving, to keep you from physically dying and being buried by your loved ones in an early grave. That's a pretty good deal. 100 calories for every dollar that you spend. Now let's go back to the Michelin restaurant. So for just my meal at the Michelin restaurant, it cost $350. Now the portions were really small. We had a lot of courses at this meal. The portions were really small. I would guess that I probably had a total maybe 1,500 calories in the 4 hours that I was there for $350. And I think that 1,500 calories is probably just me being generous. I don't know that it was actually that much. So the calorie per dollar ratio in this situation is 4, which means for every dollar that I spent at the Michelin restaurant, I was rewarded with 4 calories. As in, each calorie that I partook of at the Michelin restaurant cost me a quarter, which means that the Michelin restaurant's calories are 25 times more expensive than a Chipotle's calories. So listen, is it worth it? I don't know what the answer is for you. I know that I'm incredibly cheap and that I went to one of these places and I dropped way too much money, and I will say I do not regret it one bit. It was pretentious, portions were small, it was incredibly expensive, most expensive meal of my life by far, and yet I look back on it and go, man, I would do it again in a heartbeat. If you're still watching this, I love you more than I love doing math on things that don't matter. You know, they say math would never come back around when you learned it in school, but now I'm using it for really important things like this. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next Friday.